Committee Room 30. Signed. 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 Committee Room 30. Committee Room 30, signed. 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 Committee Room 30, Committee Room 30, signed. 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 Committee Room 30, Committee Room 30, signed. 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 Committee Room 30, Sound. 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 Committee Room 30, Sound.
Okay, colleagues, welcome to today's meeting for the Committee for the Economy, and start by taking apologies from Kate and Gary. Move to declarations of interest, if any. None online or none here. So, Chairperson's business, just one item, just to thank David Honeyford for filling my size 12 shoes last week and more than capably discharging the duty of chair. So on behalf of myself and on the committee, David, can I thank you for doing that. Draft minutes, colleagues, are at page 7. Members content that they're signed as a true and accurate reflection of the meeting? Okay, great, thank you. Matters arising, anything members wish to raise at this stage that are uncovered later in the agenda? If not, we'll move then to invite our officials in for the clustering strategy. So members will receive evidence from officials in respect of the development of a clustering strategy. I refer members to page 15 of the table pack, previous departmental correspondence at page 28 of the meeting pack, the Ulster University Economic Policy Centre report on clustering at page 34, and a sectoral action plan from page 108 to 217. On behalf of the committee, can I welcome Alan Ramsey, Linda Jameson, Martin Robertson and Rachel Corrigan. Your all colleagues are all very welcome. Welcome back to those who have been here before. Thank you very much for coming. I'm very happy to hand over to you at this stage, colleagues.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the introductions. Just make a short opening statement, and then very happy to get into questions and discussion. So we're pleased to be here to update the committee on how the department and its delivery partners are using clustering and industry collaboration as a tool of economic development. Clusters are developing within Northern Ireland, across the island of Ireland, Europe and internationally, and are recognised as a driver of growth in many industries. There is a bit of confusion around what a cluster is, but at a very basic level, when businesses come together and adopt a structured approach to collaboration, that can lead to increased productivity and competitiveness, and we have decades worth of evidence to support that outcome from countries and regions around the world. So we shared a briefing paper with the committee which sets out the current position on clusters in Northern Ireland from both the policy and operational perspective, and that includes updates from Intertrade Ireland and Invest NI, who are doing a lot of the work on the ground with both the well-established clusters and some of the more nascent and emerging clusters. So I'll give the committee just a brief overview of the current position, and then happy to take questions, and with the help of Linda, Martin and Rachel, go into a bit more detail on some of the specific programmes, the funding streams, and just the general cluster activity as the committee would find helpful. So probably useful if I start with the basics, including what we mean by clusters and clustering activity in the context of economic development. There are lots of definitions, and it can get very confusing very quickly, but the common theme, as I mentioned there, is about collaboration to address shared challenges and also share the potential benefits from economies of scale and scope. That includes greater access to specialised resources. It can mean reduced risk and reduced insurance costs when companies cluster together. And also there's evidence of clusters working well together in terms of getting into new markets around the world. So it's important to be clear that a geographic concentration of businesses in related industries alone doesn't necessarily represent a cluster. To be a cluster, those businesses must be interconnected and working collaboratively with each other, with government and with academia, including the FE colleges, universities and research centres, for example. And then at the risk of adding more confusion, there is the concept of superclusters, which expand on that core definition by bringing in capital providers. So that's investors, funders and finance partners, entrepreneurs and startups. And actually that is the operational model the department is funding currently through its cluster acceleration programme that's delivered by Invest NI. So clustering benefits both participants and the wider economy in terms of spillovers around innovation, exporting and productivity effects. So in terms of public policy, we want to encourage more clustering by addressing barriers and market failures, which in the economic jargon includes information asymmetries, coordination and network failures. So in short, we want to buy public policy outcomes by incentivising clustering activities. There are several funded programmes aimed at incentivising collaboration and networking across and between sectors. Indeed, most of the funding initiatives from both the UK and Irish governments have a strong clustering focus. So for example, the Shared Island Enterprise Scheme, the Enhanced Investment Zone Programme, Peace Plus, and the UK Government's Local Innovation Partnership Fund. They're all about enhancing innovation and collaboration between industry, government and researchers. So those funding streams allow us to build on successful clusters that we have established over the last decade through Invest NI's Collaborative Growth Programme and Intertrade Ireland's Synergy Programme. And those include ones you'll be aware of. There's the Manufacturing Engineering Growth Advancement Cluster, MEGA. There's the Generating Engineering and Manufacturing Excellence Cluster, GEMEX. There's NEMO, the Northern Ireland Maritime and Offshore Cluster, and the Advanced Food and Drink Network. The UK Government's Enhanced Investment Zone initiative is also targeting growth in the advanced manufacturing sector, specifically high potential clusters in photonics and biotechnology to address long-standing barriers around skills and infrastructure. Meanwhile, 2 clusters of focus have been identified for £30 million worth of earmarked funding under the UK Government's Local Innovation Partnership Fund. And those 2 clusters of focus are life and health sciences and net zero transport and energy infrastructure. Colleagues will be able to speak in much greater detail about the clustering activity within their organisations. And just, Chair, before finishing, to be completely transparent with the committee, the department did commit to publish a cluster policy. For the exact phraseology was publish a cluster policy for some of the most innovative and high potential areas of the economy. And that was in the 24-25 business plan. And just to be clear, we didn't publish a standalone cluster policy. However, what we did do was publish 7 sector action plans across which clustering is a common theme, and where actions were agreed to drive collaboration and networking activity within each sector. During 2024, we also worked very closely with InvestNI to develop, fund and launch the £11 million industry-led cluster acceleration programme to develop priority clusters over the next 10 years. That programme is live and making good progress. So in the context of finite resources and a shortened mandate, then Minister Murphy had a strong preference for action over policy and strategy development, especially where the evidence base for action was already well developed, as is the case with clustering. So over the past 15 years, we have evolved from informal, fragmented collaboration to a more structured approach through the Collaborative Network Programme first, then the Collaborative Growth Programme, and now the Cluster Acceleration Programme. So very happy to take any questions around any of those areas, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Alan, for that. If I could just maybe pick up on your last point. So where can anyone see the department's official clustering policy?
Well, as I said, Chair, we don't have a standalone cluster policy. We haven't published that.
Yes.
As I say, what we have done is publish the sector plans, and clustering is a common theme across those. So there's a number of actions designed to incentivise more networking collaboration. But no, we don't have a standalone cluster policy at the moment.
Then why was so? I read your business plan from last year and your business plan from this year, and publication of a clustering policy just seemed to disappear without any reference or recourse to the committee. What was the rationale for that falling off the business plan?
So I think as I said, the emphasis was put into developing the Cluster Acceleration Programme, which was and is really the flagship programme and fund to develop clusters in Northern Ireland. So we got that programme over the line. That launched towards the end of 24. I think we still would like to produce a cluster plan or an overarching cluster policy framework.
Is that in the business plan for this year?
It's not in the business plan, I don't believe, no.
Okay. So you might like to do it, but the Minister would not like to do it?
I don't think I would say that. I think she would, be keen.
As long included in her business plan?
It's not in the business plan.
Okay. I just think it's difficult then for potential investors or for local companies to get involved in a clustering policy when they'll go to look to the department, what is your clustering policy, what is your clustering strategy? Across all the useful documents that have been published and across different organisations, there seems to be different definitions of what clustering is and what the focus is. So if I'm a layman and a business operator and I can't even find the department's basic definition of a clustering strategy which is consistent, does make it quite difficult. If I wanted to focus just in relation to a couple of the projects that you talked about, which are welcome in terms of the enhanced economic investment zone, so where are we with that at present?
So first of all, it's not an area I'm directly involved in. Other colleagues are leading on that, but as I understand it, so the process is dictated through, I think it's DSET in London is the relevant Whitehall department. They have set out a number of, I think it's 5 gateway stages that have to be gotten through, and as I understand it, we are now formally through those 5 stages, and I think executive approval was secured in the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
But
You know what the projects are?
I know at a very high level, so they're around photonics, and that has a strong northwest focus, and then the other cluster of focus is around biotech. And Linda, you may have more detail.
No problem at all.
Sorry, Chair. We have been working very closely with our stakeholders and the companies that are in the emerging clusters in Northern Ireland, and specifically bringing forward those opportunities in the EIZ projects around photonics and biotech. And the photonics one is definitely building on the Smart Nano project that was already led by Seagate. And we've also a critical mass of companies that we've been engaging with, and the universities, the academic institutions as well. So we have colleagues in our sector team that have been heavily involved in photonics, and ourselves from the cluster point of view, and we have put together a proposal that is actually looking at building on the critical mass of those companies, academic institutions and investors working together to go forward. So it's the next iteration, and we very welcome, that accelerating and hopefully taking forward what we've got already on the ground and helping to build a stronger ecosystem in that area.
Executive approval of is 150 million, isn't that right?
We have in terms of clustering, we have put in an application which is a percentage of that, which is for 7.2 million.
And that's for the Northwest?
That's for photonics in Northern Ireland.
Okay. And what are the projects then that have been approved by the executive under that 7.2 million?
I don't think we're at the stage,
not at that stage
of
yet.
Projects, individual projects haven't been approved. I think, as I understand it, what the executive has approved is the overall the 150 million package, and where the emphasis should be around that, but not the further detail will then come forward around the specifics.
Yeah. Just in the business plan, the delivery of the enhanced economic investment zone was due by March of last year. We're now nearly a year on. Is there any particular reason why we haven't got to delivery stage yet?
As I say, I think there's quite a convoluted process to get through in terms of the 5-stage gateway process that DSET set around progress. So I think now with executive approval on the overall package, it moves quickly into delivery, and I think there's actually in the next month or so, some of the skills elements of that start to roll out.
Excellent. And then finally, just for me, just in relation to the Local Innovation Partnership Fund that you briefly touched on there, so that's £30 million from the UK government.
Yeah, so there's two parts to that fund. So there's what's called an earmarked fund, which is 30 million, and that's to be that will be allocated across a particular corridor. It's based around the City Deals geography, essentially. So we've established an innovation panel to sort of advise around what the focus of that should be, and that's very much around developing clusters.
The corridors between Belfast and the Northwest?
Yes,
okay.
It is. So the initial clusters of focus, there's 2 have been identified through a bidding process, just happened before Christmas.
Okay.
We actually just yesterday got our, it's called a readiness check. So basically this is DSET, again, making sure everything seems sensible. We've identified areas of focus. So that's now with them, and hopefully we can progress. And the 2 areas of focus, I think I mentioned there, are net zero transport and life and health sciences. I might be able to give you a bit more detail. So the life and health sciences, the sort of working level project title for that is Data Enabled Translation for Connected Health. And that cluster...
I have no idea what that means. Apologies. What does that mean?
Normie. So that's being developed by, I think the cluster lead on that one is Joanne Rhodes, Harani. You might have heard of them. No, they're like the
They're our arm's length body that is the cluster representation for the life and health science. So Joanne Rhodes is the cluster manager of Harani.
So she's developing out what the projects underneath that look like.
Okay.
So there'll be a number of projects, and that brings in Queen's, Ulster, various different actors. The second project of focus in is net zero transport and energy infrastructure.
I can add to that as well, Alan, if you want. Two of the emerging clusters that we have been funding around the clean tech sector and also around the Northern Ireland Maritime Offshore, which has been established for over 3 years. Both of those put in submissions as well as part of that initial expression of interest, and they have both also received letters of confirmation that they might be part of, and there's further discussion around that transport, zero carbon and transport cluster. And I know Adrian from Belfast City Council is currently trying to pull those together, and again we would welcome that because of the breadth and depth of the Northern Ireland Maritime opportunities, and also from the point of view of the clean tech sector and the potential for external investment to be attracted into the region as a result of that project as well.
Is that Belfast Harbour, or where is that?
Currently Nemo is operating in the harbour area in Belfast. However, it has other companies that are as far as Kilkeel and further up to the northwest. The clean tech is Northern Ireland wide again, but specifically for that LIP funding, they have put in a proposal which is looking at maximising the impact and connectivity with companies that are on the Belfast and Dublin area. And I think the other thing that's really exciting for us is that because we had taken a group of advanced manufacturing companies out to Bilbao, they really have gelled. And from the point of view of Mega GEMX Manufacturing Task Force engaging with the Makers Alliance, Queen's University through AMIC and the University of Ulster through Justin, they have also been in discussions about now currently putting in a further LIP funding for the next round that's coming out from UKRI.
And what's the breakdown of that 30 million in revenue per capital?
I'm not with the detail, but I can provide that to you. I don't have the detail with me, sorry.
Oh, no, it's no problem. Colleagues, is there anything you want to add in at this stage?
No, not specifically for these questions.
Patrick?
Okay, thanks, and thanks for your answers so far. I suppose this is an area of great strength and great growth, so I'm really glad to have you here today. I want to focus on 3 areas in particular. So the first one is around All Ireland working. Second one's around educational working and how you work with institutions. And then the third is around research and development. So just on the All-Ireland basis, you've mentioned the fact that you work across the island on numerous projects and clusters. So I suppose you've mentioned GEMX, you've mentioned quite a few of the ones in my own constituency, which I'm very familiar with and which obviously have huge economic benefits in our region. But what I'm keen to understand in that is, do you experience any barriers working, north and south? Do you think that there are any unique opportunities there? I'm trying to get a better understanding of the actual regulatory framework around that and exactly the difficulties and opportunities you face.
I'm happy to. I've just gone down in my seat. I don't know whether that's me ejecting out or not. I'm happy to answer that, having been in this space for quite a long time. So I think one of the things that we are really excited about is if you look at the longitudinal studies and experience that we have, some of the strengths that we have got, and we built up the critical mass, the trust of people working together, the leadership of the industry. So the Northern Ireland Polymers Association was one that we would have put a lot of investment in at the very beginning. Those companies actually built their relationship and business acumen together. They actually were able to work collectively for things. We, as part of our programme over the years, because as Alan alluded to, this is the 3rd iteration, so we have gone from making sure we're stimulating collaborative activity and ensuring the ecosystem's right. So in terms of NIPA, they actually are on an all-island basis, and we're quite delighted from the point of view that when we started them, the companies there had lots of opportunities to look at their productivity improvement, to look at joint tendering, to look at skills development and research and development collectively. But I think, and this will become more apparent when you hear from Marty and Rachel, that through synergy and other all-island opportunities, NIPA is part of that advanced manufacturing cluster on the island of Ireland, and a lot of the work they do is with the universities and the colleges as well down in Ireland. But the other thing, I suppose, as well, the other emerging cluster that we have had over the years has been, one is in terms of cyber and also in terms of financial services. So the cyber sector as well, which was linked to AI at the time, we provided initial funding to it, very small amounts from point of view of feasibility study. But as a result of that, a lot of those companies then were able to build their business acumen as well and demonstrate that they could tender for business or get contracts. But again, because the relationship we had with our colleagues in the South, and particular Cyber Ireland, and linking through the Competitiveness Institute, which we belong to, that relationship between Cyber Ireland and Northern Ireland cyber sector has been strengthened. And again, colleagues from Intertrade Ireland will talk about the work that they have been doing in that space. And I think, I'm not over the detail of the health sector, but I know we've had lots of health related projects over the years. One of them that I had funded back in 2007, which continues to this day, which is an international collaboration, which is the European Connected Health Alliance, which is now called Global Health Connector. And it specifically is looking at engaging both with the health sector on the island of Ireland, but also internationally, and have relationships all over the world, and are currently managing some 15 European projects. And in terms of challenges, I think if I go back far enough, the first challenge we ever experienced on an all-island dimension is when we were looking at smart grid and smart grid technology. And we had a collaborative project then, critical mass of companies with NIE, Sony the regulator. But unfortunately back then, the infrastructure and the regulation was holding it back. And we sort of lost that project, and it is now very much based in the south of Ireland, and we don't have it. But there's opportunities as well, because our NEMO offshore wind network as well is looking on the island of Ireland, and we have always worked collaboratively with the colleges and universities. I think from the advanced manufacturing sector, the opportunity to link into ATU and all the other training centres, and looking at the SkillNet model, there's significant learning to be had. So I think, we are not behind the door of actually supporting and encouraging companies to actually work on the island of Ireland, and I think that's where Intertrade Ireland have definitely come in and been able to pull some of those projects forward. I think the challenge for us is we need to build the critical mass and the relationships and the leadership here first and foremost, before we try and accelerate the growth on an all-island basis. So I think our colleagues in Enterprise Ireland have been doing a lot to build clusters, and we are working to make sure they work collectively together. But there's a lot more of opportunities, and that's what we're talking about through the Shared Island Fund as well.
If I can maybe come in and add to that, thanks Linda. And as you probably understand, as a cross-border body, our mission in many ways is to encourage and support cooperation and collaboration north and south, where it can accelerate growth and boost competitiveness, and we've already heard how clustering is central and fundamental to that. So we have a synergy programme which has been running now for a number of years, which is all about actually encouraging cluster activity, cluster collaboration, cooperation north and south. And perhaps if I use a couple of specific examples is probably best to highlight the success of that. So one of the areas that we've supported is our FinTech corridor, which operates between Dublin and Belfast, and a whole range of businesses, over 100 businesses located within the sector in that. And initially we provided support to help the FinTech cluster identify opportunities, working across platforms such as payments, cybersecurity and other financial technologies, but really trying to encourage them to identify what, to your point, what are the barriers that businesses face? What are the key challenges that businesses in this sector face, and how can collaborative cluster activity address that? So an example of that specifically, as we know, you could say this is true for most sectors, but skills and the shortage of skills and the right skills was a key challenge. And through the support that we provided, we encourage really strong. It also links to your second point about the academic linkages as well, and that is a key factor of successful clustering. Isn't just business to business, it's academia right at the core and at the centre of that. So through our support, for example, to the FinTech corridor, Ulster University worked with Dundalk Institute of Technology, Southern Regional College, DCU and Maynooth, and together they produced and they worked to bring forward what they called the FinTech Academy. And that specifically was seeking to address some of the skills issues, provide graduates, provide supply to those businesses, with the right skill sets. Iterations of that then led to another initiative whereby through the Digi Advance programme, they developed also micro-credential courses, again, just to help young graduates have the right skill sets that businesses required. And ultimately, it was about addressing the challenges that the SMEs faced in terms of accessing the right skills and being able to take advantage of the opportunities that exist on an all-island basis and through the collaborative activity. And that, for us, has proven very successful. You know, the work of the FinTech corridor continues. As a result of some of the support that they've had, they've established linkages, for example, directly with the Bank of England. And again, looking to see if there's opportunities for the businesses to leverage in with some of the large financial institutions and develop commercial opportunities and collaboration opportunities. There's also been an international dimension to that through, for example, a transatlantic exchange, really increasing the profile of the FinTech cluster right across international markets, but the success being cross-border and being operating very successfully on an all-island basis. So that's perhaps one of the examples that comes to mind that I think demonstrates our unique role in encouraging the all-island dimension of this, encouraging collaboration where it makes sense, addressing common needs, you know, the common needs of business, both sides of the border to drive competitiveness among the SME, Indigenous SME base, but also to exploit international opportunities. And I think FinTech is a really strong example of that.
And then at our side as well, obviously there's the Shared Island Clusters and Networks initiative, and that's a collaboration with Intertrade Ireland, Enterprise Ireland and Invest NI. And really to deliver that project, we carried out a feasibility study to identify what would make the difference in terms of the clustering side, both north and south. And we are currently implementing 3 priority areas. The first one is that international connectivity, and we're in the process of we have already delivered on that. So over a 15-month period, we bid and we hosted the TCI, which is the competitive institution. It was a global clusters conference, and that was really bringing that clusters conversation to the island. So it happened last October, and it was delivered for the first time on a cross-jurisdictional basis. There was over 200 delegates, and there was at that conference, and over 20 countries were on the island. So again, it was not only it showed the strengths of the island, but it provided us with that international collaboration and that local collaboration that we required, and we're still continuing to develop those relationships. In terms of other areas or priorities that we're moving forward with the Shared Island Clusters and Networks is our capacity building, so really professionalising the cluster sector along with Invest NI and Enterprise Ireland, and we're doing that through policy manager training or cluster manager training. And then the final area that we're hoping that we will be progressing is that collaborative innovation piece, and that's really supporting cross-border projects north and south, and that will hopefully go out by the summer.
Brilliant.
Can I just add in terms of the education? I mean, there's education in terms of the education system responding quickly to the skills agenda, which is needed for all of the various clusters that are evolving. So I think we've already talked about the advanced manufacturing and engineering sector with the academy and apprenticeship programmes, the degree apprenticeship in engineering and the work that they've been doing. There's education in the post-primary schools as well, where GEMX is leading the way in terms of Make Me, and they have engaged in the Northwest with a lot of colleges and schools, and they've demonstrated that that's a very successful model, along with the companies training themselves, being trained up as mentors to go into the schools. So there's the awareness bit, there's the flexibility and agility of the education system working to respond to the needs of the clusters that are emerging, because there's many skills needs that are right across, whether it's the maritime sector, the engineering sector and the pharma sector, AI. The skills needs are enormous, and we continue to work with colleagues in the department in terms of responding very quickly to that. I think just in terms of the international conference and the global conference we had, TCI is something that I've been a member of for 18 years. I've had the opportunity to visit global locations of cluster development, and as a result of that, over the years we have brought leading experts into Northern Ireland to meet with colleagues and actually to reciprocate and host other international best practice office visits for our clusters. And I think even as a direct result of the TCI conference, not only have we strengthened the relationship on the island of Ireland between a lot of those clusters that attended, but off the island of Ireland, because the Norwegian offshore wind cluster has an NDA with the Maritime Offshore Network, and in terms of the Icelandic cluster, it also has set up an NDA. But further to that, and it keeps giving, I think is what we would say, that we're hosting as well a delegation out to Canada, because Canada is where the world of superclusters is to be admired and also to follow. And our colleagues that were over at the TCI conference are hosting us to go out to be part of a Eureka and Horizon exchange discussion to look at how we can, on an international stage, be able to collaborate. And some of the university colleagues from both Queen's and UU will be attending, along with some of those 14 emerging clusters that we are supporting.
Brilliant. No, thank you very much for the detail. And there's obviously a huge amount of work going on there, and I think it's most impactful in communities like my own along the border who kind of can see and feel the benefit of that, because like the natural move for most of those companies is potentially from Derry to Donegal or from Newry and the Louth and so on. So it's great to hear the scale of the work that's happening. It leads me on obviously to the second point, which is around education, and again, we're very fortunate with the further and higher education colleges that we have here, as you say, that they can be responsive and that they can set up those academies. So I'm keen to get an understanding from a clustering point of view of exactly how that works. So where do the conversations begin? I'm assuming you have links with all the colleges and universities. Who begins those conversations and how do they emerge? Because they're obviously really beneficial, but I'm keen to kind of understand how they come about and how we can increase those, because there's clearly a demand there.
So there's multiple ways in which they come about, and it depends on the emerging cluster. But if we are funding any particular group to come together, and I think the confusion as well is that we need, Alan very clearly set out what we are talking about in terms of cluster and supercluster. We have been creating that critical mass in that network, but if we issue a letter of offer, and we have issued over 60 to emerging groups, we want to make sure that they have the right governance structure in place, they have the right steering groups in place. And our preference is that those steering groups have a representation from the relevant academic institutions. That's our preference. If you're looking at developing a supercluster, that would be the way we would want to make sure going forward. So in some instances, each of those clusters that we fund, they have a series of SMART objectives. They have to deliver against those, and we monitor those on a quarterly basis. But we, as in the colleagues from the department, right across all those other supporting organisations, we will connect with them. And if we see there are opportunities to engage with somebody else, we will make them broker those introductions. But we also do a lot of facilitation and workshops with all of those groups as well. So we will bring, I was heavily involved with Mid-South West Deal, and we were bringing the right stakeholders into the room. And if we have a particular cluster, whether it's Mega, GEMX, in terms of, in terms of just making sure they're engaged at the right time with the right people, we will bring the representation in from the college. And I know some of my colleagues in the regional offices as well, specifically around Dungannon and Mid-Ulster, are heavily involved in the discussions between the college and the companies at the minute in terms of looking at how we can get the next iteration of training that is necessary and will support the evolution of the industry and help productivity uplift, because there is a need for new skills and a delivery of skills, and that model of delivery as well has to change. So there's many ways in which we engage. I've also been engaged in terms of the McGee campus around the fact of how can it look at engaging with clusters and what should it do in the reimagine of McGee. And we're heavily involved with AMIC in terms of the university, or Queen's University as well. But because Invest in I is heavily involved with all the city and growth deals, all of those are actually linked into so there's multiple touch points, and it does depend between cluster and cluster.
Yeah. Okay. So there's no kind of one size fits all.
Well, there's a model that we would actively encourage, and that is the cluster business model, and that cluster business model will have a steering group, and that steering group should be representative of industry stakeholders that are in there, should represent in government representation. And we always say, and this was something we heard in Bilbao, government should be there to be listened to and to listen. We're not there as actually to steer, but the industry, all of our clusters have to be led from the bottom up and have to be industry led, because we're responding to the needs and the external shifts that are happening, and we need to be so agile. So I think that's where a lot of the success we've had to date is with the colleges and the universities really starting to turn things very quickly and rapidly to respond to the industry's needs. But there's always more. There's always more could be done.
Brilliant, and it's good to hear that kind of local knowledge and expertise is merged with the kind of the overarching strategic vision as well. Just my last point around research and development then, it's obviously key to clustering. I mean, that's essentially a core part of it. So in terms of departmental support for that, I'm keen to understand better how that comes about, because I know when we've looked as a committee in the research and development in the past, sometimes it can be within a very limited number of companies and companies who are perhaps industry leaders. So how do we actually get that in the communities, into these clusters, and make sure that ordinary businesses and people who are coming through these skills academies can sort of feel the benefit of that and actually be part of that research and development?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And so I think effectively what you're saying there is what we sort of in the jargon call comprehensive innovation. So it's not just the sort of the top big companies who are investing lots of money in R&D, but how do we encourage the small, because we're basically a microeconomy. So how do we encourage those businesses to do some R&D when it maybe just doesn't feel so urgent or important, but when they're struggling sort of month to month in some cases. So there are a number of organisations focused around that kind of, I suppose you would call the long tail of lower businesses doing less R&D. So the likes of Catalyst, for example, or complement a lot of the stuff Invest is doing with SMEs and micro companies. One interesting thing actually is I was on a call yesterday about UKRI, and they have a huge R&D budget. I think it's 9 billion for a relatively short period of time, and what the UK government have done is basically steer them towards that whole pot of money has to go around industrial and R&D priorities linked up to their industrial strategy. So we're thinking through, well, how, because we've not always been hugely successful in terms of pulling into that money. Maybe some of the big players have been. So we're working with UKRI, like how can we get our companies more of that action, basically.
Sorry, can I come in and just add to that from an Intertrade Ireland perspective as well? Driving competitiveness and innovations at the core again of policy north and south in terms of what we do, and we've developed a number of programs, a pathway of supports for those very small businesses who probably don't understand or need a better understanding, not just what innovation is, but practically how can they begin to plan, implement projects and take it forward, right through to a very successful Innovation Boost programme that we run, where we provide support to businesses to actually take on a STEM graduate, a small company to take them into their business. We fund that salary for that person to actually take forward an innovation project, leverage cross-border expertise, academic expertise, so again linking back into the industry piece, and it's a really good pragmatic way for companies to take projects forward that reduce costs, drive their own competitiveness, develop new and improved products and services, and is a really successful model. And then a number of those companies in turn move on, if they're based in Northern Ireland, will work with Invest NI and some of their R&D programmes, but also with Enterprise Ireland in the south. So it's that kind of joined up approach to provide that pathway for those that don't know it to begin to engage and understand where it can help, and also then to exploit specific collaborative projects. And we've seen where the success really, when that has a cross-border dimension, that leverage in the expertise and technology transfer, complementary skill sets, is something that's been really successful for us.
That collaborative R&D is initially challenging for companies, but when they build up trust and they have a problem they need to solve, that is when they will work collectively together. And we can see that in the Water Innovation Network, with the companies that are actually looking at driving zero carbon in that space, and they are working collectively. I mean, we do, as Marty says, we do have a suite of tools within Invest in and support programs within the R&D team, and there's a collaborative R&D project, but it's product and process innovation. And our evaluation that from 2015, the first evaluation did say one of the reasons why we get and support companies to work together, specifically SMEs, is because they are less likely to innovate, and therefore when you get them working collectively together and they build up trust, they can see that there are earlier opportunities for them to look at innovating in product or process. And I think, you know, some of the things we've been doing in the agri-food sector are quite, you know, changing the mindset, whether it's looking at the whole process innovation within the food companies, and it's whether it's looking at digital supply chain to help them accelerate and track and trace food, or whether it's looking at their automation processes. And I know the advanced food and drink sector are taking another delegation out to Japan to look at best practice in automation and artificial intelligence. But I think for us, in terms of collaborative innovation to drive innovation in product and process, it has many, many forms. And therefore, the one thing for us in terms of back to competitiveness and productivity uplift is we are proactively trying to encourage any letter of offer we issue is that companies will look at productivity uplift by either looking at lean processes, operational excellence, or making sure that they are collecting data and actually finding where they can use the data wisely to make significant changes and investment. And I think one of the most enlightening things that I had to experience recently, and it was with William McColgan from McColgan's, who is very much a leader in the food industry. When I'd been facilitating groups of companies for him to work together, they had opened their doors, they were sharing what they were doing to actually go along the transformation journey, and from that they decided they would share all their ideas instantly with the WhatsApp. So there was no investment required for us. They themselves realised, actually, you know, we do trust each other, and actually we're all in this together. We need to make sure that we can squeeze every penny and make sure we're more competitive. So how do we do that? So if we have problems with ERP, or if we have problems with AI systems, or we're buying the wrong, instantly, and William would say that to me as well, you know, that never stops. Those companies that are all working collectively are doing that because they can see they all need to actually work on solving a problem. And to me, that's a massive innovation in its own right.
Oh, big time. And look, thank you very much. I'm really interested I'm really interested in this area, and I could talk all day, so I probably have about another 20 questions, but I'm conscious other members will want them. So
have a coffee afterwards.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Sinead?
Thank you, everybody. It is a great conversation that we're having, and clustering is always good news, because when people work together and collaborate, you know, they can innovate, and it's excellent. You just mentioned there, Linda, in passing about AI and the profound impact that it potentially could have in all of the sectors that around the agri-food, advanced manufacturing, right through all of actually the clustering section. How will the sectoral plans actually inform and complement the executive's AI strategy? And do you feel that the department's AI strategy is going in the right direction, or is there further support that you would need to help support your businesses at this time?
Okay, so on the broader point about AI, so Helen McCarthy, you'll know, is the Chief Science and Technology Officer. So Helen is doing a piece of work around an AI strategy for transformation in the public sector. The department then is coming at AI from a slightly different perspective, which is about how we use it for economic development purposes. As you say, Sinead, it's going to cut across all sectors. Matrix have looked at this and given us a pretty good sense of how it breaks down across individual sectors, how it will transform the labour market. I suppose every organisation, you know, there's so many different sort of sets of predictions around AI, ranging from, you know, even the scope of, when you look at some of the reports in terms of what it could mean in terms of economic impact, range from a few million to billions, even for somewhere like here, which gives you a sense of how uncertain a lot of it is, really. But you're right, it'll cut across sectors. It is a focusing around some of the cluster work and some of the programmes. So thinking of Peace Plus, for example, which focuses around Northern Ireland and the border counties. There's some quite strong AI aspects within that, and other programmes, no doubt.
If I can jump in just as well, just to highlight a specific example. We went out recently with an open call to the market to come forward for innovation ideas for innovation programmes. And one of the projects that we've supported in its early stages is actually a company working with a number of construction companies to help them specifically understand 10 companies on a pilot program to understand where AI can enable them to kind of drive productivity, improve the use of their data, identify new opportunities. And we're providing one-to-one support for 10 companies north and south to actually look to see how AI specifically can be of assistance. We do an All-Island Business Monitor survey every quarter, have done for over 15 years, and digitalisation is one of the challenges that businesses face, small business in particular, understanding where and how this technology can actually support them. And that's why practical programmes like this that are working one-to-one to enable a company to demystify it, but actually understand it's about understanding your data and about actually leveraging the benefit and value from that data. I think are key programmes that we would support. We also do research, looking at where the all-island opportunities can be. We have consulted with both departments, north and south, and we're at the moment going out to tender for a specific piece of research. We included matrix in our consultation to develop terms of reference, just to really identify what the real barriers for small businesses are, but more importantly, how all the organisations can work together to help small businesses overcome those barriers and adopt those technologies and drive opportunity, but also looking at the skills that we've got and competence in the universities and industry and how we can leverage that on an all-island basis to actually drive more foreign direct investment, to drive more export activity, and just to improve the competitiveness of businesses right across the island.
I think, Sinead, the point you're making though as well in terms of the impact it will have on all of those collaborative groups that we have got, there's definitely a skills need in this area, and we will need to make sure that we focus and provide the appropriate skills training in a timely manner. I think it's not to be frightened of it. I think that's the other thing, and we can't hide from it. It is going to impact on every single one of those clusters. And I think we need to grasp it with open arms from the point of view of the efficiency that it can provide. And if we are driving towards productivity improvement, then AI will play a critical part in that. But I think we can have the opportunity to upskill people within industry to actually do that. And also then we have the opportunity to bring the next generation of kids from schools in that have knowledge and know-how and are willing to embrace this as well. So I think we have some more work to do, definitely around the whole skills development. And I think the voice of the industry is coming loud and clear through each of those collaborative groups or clusters that we are funding. I think Paul McCoy was up some time ago as well, and Momentum 1.0 most certainly plays a critical role as well, right across all the work we do. And I think we need to definitely engage and continue to engage the clusters with Momentum 1.0.
Yeah, I think AI, well, it's here, and it's just how we adapt, and early adopters are usually benefit greatly from it. And I suppose our young people in schools and that, this is the world that they've lived in for a very long time. So we should look after them within the context of this, and perhaps learn from them as well. And that just takes me on to my second question. This is apprenticeship week. Apprenticeships are very, very important, and it gives young people access to work in real time. And how is your your policy in relation to clustering helping support apprenticeship programs throughout SMEs?
I'm probably not the best person to answer that. Actually, I'm not close to apprenticeships, but
Sorry, Alan. And in terms of the apprenticeship programme, I think we've cited previously as well some of the examples of people that have really led the way in this. So the mega initiative, when the government was looking at, how we should change and flex the delivery of apprenticeship programmes, Mega was one of the ones that first led the way, I suppose, in developing the apprenticeship academy or apprenticeship degree with the University of Ulster. GEMAX is also working along that path. But, there's ongoing conversations are had. All of those clusters are actively involved with Apprenticeship Week. They will have companies and participating there. They are providing and training companies to host apprenticeships and changing that model. They are working very closely with the universities that are delivering the apprenticeships as well to make sure that there is somebody that is, and I would say wrapping their arms around, that's probably not the right term, but actually acting as that mentor and that glue and that facilitator between university, the company and the potential apprentice. And I think that model as well has been proven by Mega, from the point of view of being able to be there as a sounding block as well when somebody's placed in a company or placed in the university and they're sounding off in terms of challenges or opportunities. So there's definitely, apprenticeships is definitely there. It's the companies, we actively encourage all of the clusters to avail of the apprenticeship programme, and we will continue to do that. And I think it is definitely one of the things that there's definitely a bigger take up of, more so now than ever.
And maybe just to add very briefly, what I mentioned the FinTech Academy and I think it is another really good example of that, because internships, apprenticeships and higher level apprenticeships were absolutely core to the work that they did with that collaboration across all the universities and ensuring that apprenticeships were front and centre in terms of bringing those skills into businesses and enabling young people to have the necessary skills that businesses are going to need, in this case in the fintech area, but also in areas such as cybersecurity and a number of the priority sectors that have been identified by the department as the ones that represent areas of strength for Northern Ireland and are very well aligned to areas as well in the south. Advanced manufacturing, life sciences and other areas.
And I think we need to commend the department from the point of view of shifting the age level of apprenticeships. That has been something that has been absolutely game changing as well for a lot of those companies, because at least they're able to bring people in from a different industry or different experience and come in to do an apprenticeship programme. So I think we need to commend the department in doing that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And the last question I want to just ask is, can you maybe speak to the benefits of the dual market access? How critical are they to the success of many of the clusters, and how would you describe the executives' approach to selling those benefits? Are we really harnessing that benefit to the best of our ability in relation to those clusters here in Northern Ireland and their collaborative partners?
Yeah,
In the first instance,
yeah, just in general terms, I suppose quite a number of our clusters are in the manufacturing space, and I suppose that is where the potential dual market access arrangement can be most beneficial. Always depends on the particular business model of any individual company as to whether it can benefit or not, in terms of its purchasing arrangements, its supply chain arrangements. So it's very difficult to be generic about it in terms of a cluster as such. But obviously the Minister has been keen to promote dual market access. The Murphy Review, which is just, I think the Murphy Review completed a few months ago, but the UK government has just issued its response, and it has committed to promote and raise awareness around dual market access. So we wait to see what that looks like. It has obviously announced an initial amount of money. I think it was about 16 million at budget to support some advice and guidance. So yeah, just in terms of the general point, it will depend on the individual business, the model, but certainly for some clusters there will be opportunities where they can sell into both markets, and some of the bureaucracy and paperwork will be minimised relative to GB companies or EU companies.
Again, if I can come in on that, we talked about the importance of clustering in terms of collaboration, innovation, but obviously clustering is critical in terms of identifying commercial opportunities and encouraging trade. And one of the areas that we work in terms of our trade supports, we have developed a trade hub, which is supplying companies its digital first service backed up by chat support and one-to-one bespoke support to businesses to try and help them identify where the unique opportunities are to trade. In our case, our focus is in the cross-border market, but equally dual market access, as you've identified, creates opportunities for Northern Ireland businesses in particular to sell off the island, but at the same time also creates additional supply chain opportunities. And that's something that we in Intertrade Ireland are focusing on and trying to identify those unique supply chain opportunities initially across the island where it actually contributes to sustainability, but identifies opportunities for small businesses in particular to feed into the supply chains of some of the large companies that we have north and south. And I think it's an important initiative. And also in our trade hub, in the last year alone, we had over 55,000 companies availing of the information and advice and up-to-date information where the issues were and how to identify those in terms of customs, VAT and other areas. So I think dual market access represents a strong opportunity, not just for Northern Ireland, but particularly for Northern Ireland, but actually to encourage that all-island supply chain activity as well.
Yeah. Just Marty, quickly on that, have you got data in relation to the value, the commercial value on the growth of clustering and what it adds to our economy?
We wouldn't hold that information specifically in terms of the clustering activity, but again, if I can, where our focus is, I suppose the example I would look to is the value of cross-border all-island trade at the moment, you know, which is up at 12 billion sterling, and it's at a record high, and the latest export stats that we've got access to suggest that's going to be maintained and we're going to be set for another record year. So that trade on the island is going from strength to strength, and it's something that in Intertrade Ireland we obviously play a key role in supporting those very small businesses to look for the first time at exporting to the cross-border market, because we have evidence to show that 3/4 of the businesses that start selling in the cross-border market go on to sell off the island, and that's something that the Department, Invest NI and the Department in the South and Enterprise Ireland are very keen to continue, and we play a key role in supporting those first-time exporters.
So are you saying that you don't monitor the growth of clustering is happening, and we can see that from the papers, but do you actually monitor what impact that has from a commercial basis, the value of clustering in terms of growing the economy and what it means for jobs? How do you know the impact that it is having on the economy?
Thank you, Sinead. Having been through 3 iterations of evaluation and economic appraisals, I think we have evaluated a lot of stuff in the recent...
Do you monitor it, yes or no?
Sorry, yes, we do. And I think...
Can we provide that to Sinead then?
And I think as well, from the fact that we've put in 3.3 million in the Collaborative Growth Programme, the initial findings showed a £32 million return with the potential another 31, as the programmes continue to deliver. But we have lots of examples through our monitoring and evaluation and quarterly monitoring of companies that have got external sales as a result of it. And Kilkeel Offshore, Seasource are an example of a £22 million ongoing contract. So, we have lots of examples and can cite those.
It would be great to have some data in relation to the impact that it's having. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for coming in today. And Pádraig has asked some of the questions I was going to ask there, but I just want you to address also the cluster accelerator programme. Are you satisfied it's been regionally balanced? I'm thinking more of the southwest. I'm not thinking of Mid Ulster and Dungannon and AME, the advanced manufacturing, but I'm thinking of the southwest itself.
The Cluster Acceleration Programme, which launched last October, it's an open call, it's a competitive call, and therefore we will actively support companies from wherever in Northern Ireland that when they make a submission to that call process. I think from the evidence we've got so far, there's more than 60% of the businesses outside the Belfast metropolitan area that are engaged with stakeholders. We're working very closely with the councils as best we can to actively encourage more collaboration. One of the ones that would have been proactively engaged in the Southwest would have been the HATS network when we were previously funding the tourism related projects. So we would have had significant engagement through it on a Northern Ireland point of view, but specifically the Southwest. So it will be dependent on where the critical mass of businesses are, the needs are, and also in terms of where the academic institutions are. So there is more probably we can still do, but we are open to, and not, we're open through a competitive call.
Thinking in terms of the 7 sectoral areas, where you've got a region that may not be as strong in those sectors, and the clusters, the density required is 15 to 40 firms, I think, in a cluster threshold, and that may not happen in the smaller, in the regions that I'm thinking of.
Yeah. I think if you go back to the definition that we are now using as a supercluster, the reason being is that we believe that companies, that used to be, there was a 2-hour distance between them, but actually the world has changed and we are saying that Northern Ireland wide is the critical mass. That's where the potential is for supercluster to leverage all those assets we've got Northern Ireland wide. I realise as well there is an opportunity to build that engagement in the regions, and we are definitely doing that, and that's where a lot of those clusters start, because they're a nucleus of companies and stakeholders that are engaged in the region. But from a Northern Ireland perspective, we want to actively encourage Northern Ireland wide superclusters to grow and form.
Thanks, Linda. And a question for Martin is about BORMAC, the Border Region Manufacturing Cluster. What support are you giving to it? How do you see it developing cross-border from Fermanagh into Monaghan and Cavan?
Yeah, we supported BORMAC through our Synergy programme a number of years ago, and indeed we focus on a number of the manufacturing clusters north and south and provide that support. So as part of that work, again, a number of the cluster organisations came together, collaborating on a north-south basis, trying to identify those opportunities where they could encourage collaboration, encourage knowledge exchange, the sharing of best practice, north and south, linking in, for example, to ATIM, based in Mullingar, and the big centre of expertise that exists there. So providing support and opportunities for companies north of the border to come and learn and avail of some of the supports that were available. So, and manufacturing is at the core and at the forefront of what we do. Another maybe just practical example of one of the things that we supported, working with NI Cyber and Cyber Ireland, but they specifically came to us to seek support for a project focused on manufacturing businesses, and it was to do with the risks that were there in relation to cybersecurity in particular, and the vulnerabilities that manufacturing firms can face in that. We've seen the particularly devastating impact of the JLR cyber attack. But through our support then, Cyber NI and Cyber Ireland worked together with 30 businesses, again north and south, to actually enable them to identify not just where the risks and vulnerabilities were, but to then take action to address those. So again, it's just another, I suppose, practical example of some of the supports that we've done. And on the back of that, maybe to Sinead's point as well from earlier, both of those organisations have now signed a memorandum of understanding. They're now collaborating and they've produced a research report trying to identify new opportunities for further collaboration activity, but also in terms of identifying what the value, to Sinead's point from earlier, is of the cyber sector. So again, there's over 10,000 people employed across the island in cybersecurity, significant revenues of over €3 billion. So I think those are all important examples to show when we can encourage that collaboration, the collective impact of that aids growth and helps SMEs in both economies.
And
It's all-
just on the Bormac side of things, obviously we're working with Bormac at the minute, and it is working with a number of clusters in the north. And really, what they're doing is that they are working together to put that best practice forward. And also, they've planned a number of workshops, both cross border, to be able to share the information and collaborate together. So there is currently a synergy project working on that.
It's for that supply chain, the opportunities
Exactly.
cross-border.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you so much, Anna. And David?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to run through, but I want to start with skills. So CBI have launched this morning just another one of their sort of updates, and this comes up repeatedly. I was with IBEC sort of a little while ago, and skills and the number of people coming through, that is the barrier to grow a lot of future growth. So you've talked about the UU, DCU, Maynooth, the collaboration there. How does that, talk us through how that actually works? How does that work in practice for somebody here? How do we make sure the skills are in Northern Ireland for us to have for our companies?
Yeah, well, I suppose the two organisations come together in this particular case, and I suppose with industry at the core of that, they're consulting the businesses, large and small, in terms of what are the specific challenges you face, what are the specific skills you're needing, and the practical outworkings of that through that collaboration was identifying very specific through the academy. If I go back to that example, very specific skills that they then needed to develop, and even down both in terms of a certificate in financial intelligence and technology was developed in this instance by DCU, but also then working to look at that level of micro credentials, those smaller skill sets, those bite-sized things and working through colleges as well. So where you see that develop is that each of the organisations involved bring a unique skill set in terms of their academic experience, and leveraging that to ensure that the businesses can actually put graduates and things through that and address the skills.
What I'm getting at is, so if I'm a business and I'm really selfish here in the Belfast-Dublin Economic Corridor in Lagan Valley, and I have a company there, can I put a student, is that course where I get the bit where somebody's specialist on something and another on another, but does that student able to go to a part in also UU or a part in DCU, or how does that work? Is it just a case of sharing information?
No, I mean, there are specific courses again that are available, and it would be sort of down to the individual business in terms of where the skills that they need are most accessible. Through the FinTech corridor, I think they specifically try and identify what those needs are for their member organisations to ensure that in turn they're directing them to the right programmes and the right skills and the right education, if you like, as well as some of the practical things that they need. So it's the organisations, and you know, maybe Linda has other examples of that as well to share. But when they come together, they can really identify for their members ultimately, because that's what it comes down to. How do the businesses, as you say, know where to go and what support's available to them? But that's coordinated through some of the projects.
Yeah, and I think as well from our side, obviously with some of the clusters that we work with, the skills piece is very, very important, and it's actually how some of the clusters actually start. So if you look at Cyber Ireland and Northern Ireland Cyber, they came together because of the skills piece. You know, if you look within the market, there was the lack of that. There was those cyber skills, so they came together to analyse it and to analyse that through a feasibility study, and from that they were able to identify, okay, these are the skills that are missing, and how can we move forward with that through the different courses in the different universities.
Okay, yeah. That's brilliant. You moved me on to FinTech, because you talk about the corridor, the sort of Dublin Belfast, sort of the corridor there as a location and a gateway into Europe. Can you talk us through evidence that that's actually happening?
Yeah, well, again, I suppose you look to the sort of strength of the cluster in terms of the growth of their membership, the fact that our supports, and it's true for both Invest NI and ourselves and Enterprise Ireland in the South, we're trying to encourage those clusters to ultimately become self-sustaining. And I think the growth in the membership of those organisations and some of that activity that I alluded to in terms of not just the training and the support and the skill sets, but some of those international linkages in turn are leading to actual real business and real orders and success. Those businesses then in turn on the back of that increase their employment. So I think I'm not going to kind of I don't have those figures to hand in terms of demonstrating the actual impact, but the growth of the clustering activity, the success of some of those businesses, the growth in membership of those organisations, and it's not just, we mentioned fintech, but there are plenty of other examples of that right across in some of these sectors such as cyber and other areas that align very strongly to the priority sectors. Life sciences and biosciences is another example of that, and ultimately you'd measure the value and success of that in terms of the contribution to GDP, the turnovers, the employment, and the high value jobs that are created on the back of some of the clustering activity.
If we could get that information right across all of them, it would be really useful. Last week I was told that it was disingenuous, I was misguided, I had no evidence, I was exaggerating. All of those things were said, and part of the problem with this, and Invest and I have said this to us before, that there's an agenda that is actually preventing business from putting its head above the parapet and actually going out to sell that success. So if we could have that, it would be really, really useful. Whenever you talk about the life sciences, the fastest growing part of our economy, and you talk through 25% of economic output and that at 1.2 billion per annum. Can we just nail this? Because what is constantly said when we talk about dual market access and this in the department, or actually you're saying that this is the reason for this happening, is these life sciences a goods, or is it goods, manufactured goods, or is there a percentage breakdown of services? Is the growth happening within the goods, or is it happening within the services?
Specifically within the life sciences?
Yeah, just
sector,
on that one.
I would have to...
It'd be useful to get that information as well. Whenever there's accusations flying around, business needs certainty. Business needs... We met as a committee with the Finance Committee, with the accountants, of Ireland, and they're talking about 20 years of certainty that business is looking. The problem I have whenever we're seeing papers like this, we're not providing that certainty as politicians to the business.
We're happy to look at that, and life sciences, a lot of that will be medical devices, pharmaceuticals. Probably where it maybe gets a bit more complicated is some of the services will be embedded within products, and then it becomes difficult, but we should still be able to have a broad sort of overview.
Perfect, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, colleagues, that's all from our committee today, so can I thank you very much for your work, it's much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
That was your leader.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's for that.
Okay, Peter. So, members, just in summary from that briefing, is the committee content then to write to the departments? We're looking for a breakdown on the local innovation partnership funding projects and what they know so far. Information on the economic value of clustering. In terms of the fintech corridor, we're looking for the impact of that, the difference it has made on around life sciences, a breakdown between goods and services.
Perfect.
Is that sufficient?
I think it would be useful, I'm happy to take the committee's views, but just to get an oral briefing on the update on the enhanced economic investments, and if there's 150 million there, I'm just keen to see what progress we've made on trying to deliver that. There's obviously a number of projects that have somewhat been referenced there in the Northwest, but I'd be keen just to see what that 150 million is going to be profiled against across Northern Ireland, and then also maybe it's my ignorance, but I wasn't aware of £30 million of funds for cluster and innovation between the Northwest and Belfast, so I'd be keen just to try and get an oral briefing on that if possible as well, but obviously that'll be up to committee if they're content for us to do that.
Absolutely.
No issue with it.
Chair, I think we've asked a few times about the enhanced investment zone, and it's all very blurry. We just cannot get to the bottom of it, so I think it's really important, particularly that there has been initiatives or projects passed within the executive, and we still are none the wiser.
I have no issue with it. The only thing is, I think that Alan mentioned that there was quite a bit more detail still to be, so I'm like absolutely no issue with it. I'm just conscious, is now the right time to be asking for it? Do you know what I mean? So if there's still a lot of progress, I would kind of maybe counter propose that we write and ask for a timeline, and then based on that we decide when we should have them in, because we don't want to have them in and they're coming in and saying, look, decisions are to be made in a couple of weeks, months, whatever. So I just think that would be more pragmatic, and then we can make a more informed decision then.
Okay.
Just to advise the committee that the committee is already written to the department in those terms, so we're expecting an answer very shortly. I'd actually already put into the forward work programme that when we go into the Northwest, we'll hear from McGee and all that good stuff, we'll visit Seagate, all that good stuff, and we'd also scheduled in, the department hasn't confirmed, an oral briefing on the enhanced investment zone. I'd also then squeeze in the local innovation partnership fund, because like the chair, I hadn't heard about that since we saw it. So
that's useful. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Members content with that approach? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. We'll then move to item 7, Grid Connections Policy Framework, oral and written evidence. The department consulted on revisions to grid connectivity policy in January 25. The Minister issued her decision document recently, and we have colleagues from the department. Sarah Brady's not here, is she? No, that's no problem at all. So we have Katrina Harkin and Lindsay with us here today, so thank you very much, and I'll hand over to you.
Thanks so much, and thank you all for having us today. I have some brief opening remarks, and then we're more than happy to take questions. Like I say, thanks for the opportunity to brief you today on the Department's recent consultation on grid connections policy and the Minister's decision to introduce a fairer approach for households, businesses and generators. Over the next decade and beyond, NIE Networks will undertake a major programme of rebuilding and reinforcing the electricity distribution network. The RP7 programme represents the first major phase of this work, with upward of $2.3 billion to be invested over the 6 years to 2031 to operate and upgrade the grid. This will deliver a more reliable and resilient system and provide the additional capacity needed to support the delivery of self-sufficiency in affordable renewable energy, reducing consumers' exposure to volatile fossil fuel prices affected by geopolitical events. However, under the current connections policies, customers who request a new or upgraded connection are required to pay any reinforcement costs triggered by that connection. This has long been recognised as unfair. The first customer to connect pays for an upgrade that benefits their neighbours who follow, what is commonly referred to as the first mover disadvantage. This also creates a barrier for economic growth, particularly in rural areas where businesses are disadvantaged compared to those in our towns and cities. It is also a barrier to connecting renewable generation and for adopting low carbon technologies such as EV charging infrastructure and battery storage, which supports lower costs for electricity for consumers. Therefore, addressing this barrier is essential to supporting economic growth, delivering regional balance and meeting statutory climate targets. We launched our consultation on the 30th of January 2025. 4 policy options were presented with full socialisation of distribution reinforcement costs identified as our preferred option. The consultation closed in April with 30 responses from a wide range of organisations, including network companies, third sector organisations, businesses and government agencies. A large majority supported full socialisation, recognising that it is a fairer approach that brings connection policy here more into line with that in the South and in Britain. It enhances the region's attractiveness for business investment and removes significant barriers to both lowering costs to consumers and economic growth. The Minister announced her decision on the 26th of November, adopting a full socialisation of distribution reinforcement costs, with implementation now well underway. The Department has asked the utility regulator to progress the necessary licence modification as quickly as statutory processes allow. NIE Networks will then publish its revised statement of connection charges and is working to ensure a smooth transition for both existing and new applicants. We expect the new policy to take effect by the end of June this year. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Katrina, and I warmly welcome the decision that the Minister has made. I think it's a good decision, but I am concerned in the manner in which the decision was made. It is usual protocol and practice that when a department goes out to consultation, they then come to this committee and give feedback on the consultation. The committee was ignored and bypassed by the department on this, and an announcement was made. I can't think of another example in which a minister has done that since the restoration of the Assembly and the Executive. So it would be remiss of me not to ask you why that was the case and why this committee was ignored during this process.
Look, I genuinely, not to make excuses, I can't imagine for one second that was done in any purposeful way to not give the committee its place. I don't have an answer for that today. I know we have been working at pace to try and bring this decision into play, but I just don't.
Listen, it's not
Yeah.
the two of you here. I don't blame you for that. I want to thank you for the work that you've done on this. I think this is a really important step, but I just want to make clear from my perspective that when the consultation closed and the feedback was received, it is agreed practice and custom that the committee is then given feedback on the consultation, and then the Minister makes her political decision, which she's entitled to do. She's made the right decision in this case, but I just think it's poor form that this committee was not given its place in relation to that process. In terms of the implementation then of the outworkings of the decision, and as I say, I warmly welcome the decision that she has made. How confident are we in June 2026?
Yeah, I think all the signs are there that the June 2026 is it. The utility regulator, I'm sure you're already aware, has launched their required consultation on the socialisation. So it was launched on, I think, the 15th of January and is due to close mid-February. Lindsay, isn't that right? So in terms of our engagement with UR and NIE, all signs are that June is an achievable date.
Okay, perfect,
Yeah.
that's great. And then just in terms of next steps then, so you've already done this will be implemented in June, and that's great, but there's still a lot more work to do in terms of building out the grid capacity here. Is that in your...
It does fall. I mean, I think my colleague Ryan was here last week and gave a really good sort of summary of how all these elements work together. Yeah. In terms of the wider build out of the grid, we have the Grid Development Monitoring Group, yeah, right. Lindsay, and I mean, do you have any?
Yeah, well, this is for the distribution network, yes. So we're building out, it will facilitate the build out for that side of it. Yep. And then the Grid Development Monitoring Group also is there to monitor and look at the development of both the transmission and the distribution network.
Perfect. And it's now meeting on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's right, yes.
Not, and that has representatives from the Department of Industry, Sony, etc. sitting on that, is that right?
Yeah, that's the Department, the Utility Regulator, NI Networks and Sony.
Right. Okay, perfect. Okay, no, listen, as I say, I think it's a welcome decision. I can't speak on behalf of everyone here, but I think we'll all welcome this, particularly our rural colleagues who this particularly impacts. And with that, I'll bring in Gemma Dolan. Gemma.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you both for coming in. And yes, the Chair is right. I do warmly welcome this, and as do my constituents. So, girls, can you expand on how you feel this move to full socialisation will support us reaching our decarbonisation targets?
So do you want to?
Yes, the socialisation will unlock the barriers to the uptake of low carbon technologies and renewable generation. You know, we have heard from stakeholder responses that those high costs have been barriers and have been a disincentive to people investing in those. So this is a really positive move forward in that space as we move towards our decarbonisation targets.
And I think particularly for people like myself who do live in rural communities, if the accent didn't give me away, it really is a very, very positive. And I think in terms of you know, really embracing low carbon technologies and removing those barriers, and it not just being a city centre idea. That this is something that all citizens will be able to avail of. And again, I think it's important that we understand that this is a step towards. It is not, you know, this no one thing is gonna get us to 2030. But I do think this is a positive step.
Yeah. No, great, thank you. It is positive. And maybe for those watching who aren't aware, could you outline what the benefits are for people living in rural areas, in particular, as we've mentioned, who have disproportionately had to pay for connecting to the grid?
Would it be helpful, Gemma, if I start from explaining the different connection costs, why these costs, yeah, what they are, and why they matter? So, as it was explained to me, and as I will explain to you, there are two different sort of aspects of connections. The first is The extension assets, and what they are the assets that belong specifically to the person that's connecting. So those costs remain with the connecting customer. The other aspect of it, where we have identified the unfairness and what this policy is going to address, are the reinforcement costs. So those reinforcement costs are upgrades to the wider electricity network that are needed because of additional demand or generation. Once that is reinforced, everybody living in that area benefits from that reinforcement, which is why it's fair that that cost then be shared. In terms of the benefits, I mean, I think we could probably enumerate them, but really what we're looking at is investment in rural areas. We're looking at access, and actually not necessarily just rural areas. There are areas in the city and urban areas where maybe the reinforcement, congestion has meant that reinforcement costs are required. But really, for rural areas and those kind of areas, we're looking at increased investment. We're expecting job creation. We're expecting economic development in these areas, and all facilitated by these costs being shared. So.
No, that's great. That's really, really clear. So thank you very much. That's all my questions, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Gemma. Sinead?
Thank you very much, and thank you. And again, I would like to lend my voice that this is very welcome as well. Can I ask, how does the department intend to evaluate whether the policy actually delivers, and how the impact of that policy will have on consumer bills? How will that be assessed?
In terms of evaluating how the policy delivers, that the utility regulator and NI networks will monitor that, and the utility regulator will assess it as the policy evolves and as they move towards the end of their price control period, the current one RP7, and again as they move into the future price control. So they will be keeping a close eye on how this works and just ensuring that it is performing in the way that it's intended.
That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sinead. Easy. David?
Just to absolutely clarify something, because this has been raised, so in real layman's terms, if I'm building a house in the countryside or a business in the countryside or whatever, the cost from me to the grid hasn't changed. Right. That is still the same cost.
The individual connection cost.
The actual cost. So the cost of the connection, the only thing we're talking about here is the grid. So if the transformer or whatever is upgraded, it's that cost. Yeah. No, I totally welcome this. It's a step in the direction. But if I'm 400 metres away from the nearest transformer, I've still got a sizable cost. Yeah. And some narratives around this has been that cost has now been socialised, and it absolutely hasn't.
It's the reinforcement costs, David. Okay. And I think, although in our decision paper we had included some examples of connection applications that have been cancelled due to the high costs, but the high reinforcement costs. Yeah. So you're right. The connection costs belong with the cost.
With the thing, and I welcome this come through. And just to clarify that, because I've had people coming to me going that here we're going to wait because we'll not have to pay anything, and it's our pay reduced. So that's not the case. Okay. Second, if builders building over 12 with development in the more urban areas and there's more than 12 values, that value, what is that? Because the figures are different from what the Construction Employers Federation are giving out than what has been said. I think it's a differential there. It's about 2,500. Is that now the rate that's 2.4 or something, was it?
Yes, so the developments for 12 dwellings or more are on it. They have a standardised charge, and so that's for them, where it's an average cost of the average cost to connect one house is how they will. However many houses, that's how that will be applied. Okay. This will apply to them. but the outworkings of that would, it's quite a complex methodology. But and I can find out more.
Oh, it's just that it's to clarify that figure because we have housing, one in my own area that they've come and they've a development coming in. It's to know what that will be and when that change really comes in is really when is the question. So if we could get a clarity on what that value is on the more than 12, it'd be really useful. And then the last thing for me really is around the costings. You've 117.8 million is the kind of what the value of what this will be. Is there a chance or that could go above this if we get more connections, or where's that figure coming?
I think anything that is demand led and forecasting. Yeah. So I mean, we are. I think those figures they're NIN's modelling. I think.
Okay.
But it is based on best evidence today of what this is going to do in terms of demand. I think in terms of connections generally, I think maybe 15 to 20% of connections have reinforcement costs included. So I think there is a robustness to that figure, but it is a forecast, and that's something that the utility regulator and NIEM will be monitoring as we move forward into the next price control.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Anna.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Thank you for coming in. I was at an event last week with Sony for the enhancement of the substation in Tyrone, or around Dungannon, so it was good to see that work is coming on stream. But thinking further afield of the more rural out west properties, and that fuel poverty is disproportionately greater in rural areas, how can you safeguard those properties where there are grid constraints from being disproportionately affected in terms of the costs added in the socialisation?
So I think whenever we were developing this policy, and across our thinking in the department, fuel poverty and energy group is fundamental. I think in the development even of our wider energy strategy, we were very we did want to place consumers, and particularly vulnerable consumers, at the heart of the energy strategy. I think for rural communities, they're disproportionately affected by the current policy because the reinforcement costs are disproportionately applied to somebody that wants to bring more jobs into those areas, or wants to build a house so I think that the offset of the socialisation is these benefits that it's going to bring, particularly to rural communities. So.
And just really as well, it's increasing that fairness and getting rid of that first mover disadvantage, where the single customer who moves first would have to pay for the reinforcement, and then others subsequently who might come along can benefit from it without contributing to that cost. So that's the other side to it as well.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, that's all we have. Thank you very much. We appreciate your help and updating us on that. Very helpful. Thank you indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, there was just something David wanted to follow up there, Peter.
Yeah, just to follow up with the department, just on the cost of the 12 house connection. Yeah, because there's
two different numbers.
Yeah,
it's just to get it.
Okay, colleagues, content. Okay, item 8 then, members. The Public Records Office at Northern Ireland have laid a further education, retention and disposal schedule before the Assembly. These schedules are treated like SRs and are subject to negative resolution. Thus, if the committee or any member objects to disposal of any records in the schedule, he or she can pray against it. This is done by submitting a motion for plenary debate to require preservation of any scheduled records. The schedule sets out time periods for the retention of records and their final disposal or preservation. It appears that almost all of the records are retained for a few years and then destroyed. A very few are retained by the colleges or returned to a third party or retained by Pruney. Members have any questions on this? No. Are the committee content then with the schedule as drafted? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Item 9 then, members, is an SL1, the Renewable Obligations Amendment Order, and refer members to the table pack at page 36. The Department proposes to lay an SR entitled the Renewable Obligation Amendment Order Northern Ireland 2026. The proposed rule will be subject to draft affirmative resolution procedure and then thus would come into effect following debate in plenary. The Minister has requested that the Committee shortens the SL1 consideration period as far as possible to enable timely implementation and coordination with the rest of the United Kingdom. This is why it has been tabled. The proposed SR will amend the Renewables Obligations Order Northern Ireland 2009 to replace the Retail Price Index with the Consumer Price Index for calculating annual adjustments to the buyout price for obligation periods beginning on the 1st of April 2026. The Department's recent correspondence on this subject are at page 47 of the tabled packs. Members have any questions at this stage? If not, members content that we issue a call for views used in citizen space and publish the SL1, the proposed draft statutory rule and relevant documentation on the Department
website.
On the Committee's website. Yeah, members content. Okay, thank you. Correspondence then, members will move to item 388 of the pack. So item 2, members are asked to note a ministerial correspondence providing departmental response to the public consultation on the closure regulations for the RHI scheme. Members content. Thank you. Members are asked to note a ministerial notification of an oral statement on the 9th of February 2026 in respect of the outcome of the North-South Ministerial Council. Members content to note. And then a further statement will be made by the Minister on the 9th of February in respect of another MNSC meeting. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 5, members are asked to note the Department's 2-year progress report on delivering the economic vision. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 6, members are asked to note a departmental briefing paper in respect of the call for evidence on biofuels, transition away from fossil fuels for heating. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 7, members are asked to note a copy of correspondence from the Committee for Justice to the Department in respect of non-publication of outcomes of employment tribunals. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 8, again for noting, is a memo from the Committee for Finance. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 9, members are asked to note correspondence from the Youth Assembly. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 10, members are asked to consider a response from the Secretary of State for Transport in respect of the Northern Ireland car market and GB EU vehicle type approvals. Committee content to forward the response to the NFDA and to the Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee. Okay. Item 11 then, members are asked to note a copy of correspondence from the House of Lords Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee. Members content to note. And again at item 12 for noting from the Northern Ireland Scrutiny Committee. Content. Item 13, members are asked to note correspondence from UCAS. Members content to note. Thank you. Item 14, members are asked to consider correspondence from Advice NI. Members content to note at this stage. Thank you. Item 15, we're going to have our clerk do a bit more due diligence on this.
Yeah, so we're not sure about this one at all. So this is an invitation to the UN where they would all expenses paid. It sounds too good to be true, so
we'll ask you to do a bit of.
We'll do that.
Yep. Okay. Item 16, members are asked to note a copy of Pivotal's programme for government. Members content to note. Okay. Any queries in respect to correspondence? Okay. Forward work plan, Peter.
Thanks, members. If I just catch up with the chair, okay then. So the forward work programme is page 728. So next week we're at Lanark Way with a Skills for Life and Work provider. So we'll have an external meeting there. Lanark Way's on the Shankill. We'll send you directions. There's car parking in the nearby Shankill Women's Centre. In terms of the 25th of February, you can see there the committee had planned to take evidence on the economic impact on the hospitality sector of VVAL 26. Just to confirm with members, still content to do that. We'll have Hospitality Ulster, Food to Go and the Hotels Federation, just to indicate their views on what the economic impact of that rating arrangements, although ratings of course a matter for the Finance Committee. This would be about the economic impact, so members still content to do that?
Yeah.
Okay then, the Department has indicated that it will come on the 4th of March to talk about the Higher Education Financial Needs Assessment, so that's now confirmed. And then as indicated earlier, 11th of March, external meeting, Magee campus. We'd hear from the Magee Task Force. We'd hear from Seagate. We would actually go to Seagate and look around. So that would be, I think they're going to be the beneficiaries of this photonics stuff and the EIZ stuff. But as I said, we're expecting a response from the department on the Enhanced Investment Zone, the EIZ. We're trying to get a briefing from them at that time. So hopefully that will be good news, a good news story all around. Let's hope. So the utility regulator will therefore be on the 18th. Right, on the briefing from UCAS and CAO, right, we've had some contact from CAO, we're waiting for some further information from UCAS. What I propose to do is just take it off the forward work programme for now, but what we'd end up doing is probably having 4. It would be CAO, the Irish Universities Association, who set the equivalences. CAO just administer, but they would do the timing, which is an issue. And you would want them to coordinate with UCAS, and I suspect there's a similar UK body for the universities. So it might be all 4 of those that would have at the one time, but we're just trying to organise that.
Just in terms of that, did you say we're taking it off the forward work programme?
Well, we're waiting for UCAS to write to us, and they're going to tell us, because they said, oh no, you don't understand our role, we do this. Yeah. So when that comes back, so it would be to be scheduled. I just wouldn't put a date on it yet, because I think it's going to be a little different than what I thought.
And CAO haven't responded.
I'm just, the reason I'm asking is because obviously as we come into sort of, if we leave it till next September, we're kind of too late. So it's trying to get it on as early as possible. So I mean, I would support us even setting an indicative date, which is sort of subject to other pressures. I just think it's important to have it in the diary so that we don't, because I know we've so many commitments, it could end up slipping. Just so. Okay,
if that's agreed, Chairperson, I'll do that, and I'll do my very best to get them in on the date as shown.
Thank you.
We'll see how well that goes. If that's agreed. Okay. Still waiting for the department to confirm on regional balance, to brief on that on the 22nd. Also, members, in respect of the HMRC stakeholder group, so you will recall this was an issue raised by the Road Haulage Association. We contacted the HMRC, so they have a Northern Ireland stakeholder group. They declined to appear in front of the committee because they said the matters were reserved. The Windsor Framework Democratic Scrutiny Committee has a full programme and won't be able to I simply noted that information, and don't think we're going to take that forward. So is the committee content to refer this to the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee, because they will deal with the reserved stuff, and they are sort of looking for things to do on this in this area. So if that's agreed, Chairperson.
Great.
Fab. So members therefore content with the work programme as amended.
Great.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Any other business, colleagues? Not, if not, can I thank you?
And sorry, members, we have a press release which is in just at the back of tabled items from Sony. So we're going there today. There's a couple of words from the chairperson at the back, which you can see. So it's all nice. If members are content with that.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll see those who are able to make it to Sony there, and if not, I'll see the rest of colleagues next week. Thank you very much indeed for your attendance. The committee will now adjourn.
Thanks very much. Thanks, members. And
Committee Room 30, sound. 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 Committee Room 30. 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 Sound. Committee Room 30, 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 sound.